Greetings and welcome to another episode of the Unnamed Bracketology podcast. My name is Kerry Miller, joined as always by my good friend Graham Dorn. Graham, you texted me like 45 minutes ago and you're like, should we do this before the games start today? I was like, I mean, the only one that matters is Houston, Arizona State. And then you're like, no, the NFL games. I was like, oh, yeah, that's still happening. Let's do that. Who are you picking today in the NFL games? I don't care.
Uh, who do I want to win is different than who I think is going to win. I think it's going to be the Patriots and the Rams. I would prefer the Bears and the Texans. So we'll see what happens.
Thus concludes the NFL portion of today's episode of the Unnamed Bracketology podcast. We're going to recap some of the biggest results. Made a list of the five biggest wins, the five worst losses, five what I'm deeming bubble brawls. We'll talk one seeds, then we'll talk bubble. But let's dive right into it with what I think was the biggest win of the day. And I'll pull up the spreadsheet that I made real quick this afternoon. And that is Florida's win at Vanderbilt. For me now, the Gators are the highest seed in the SEC. You still have them slightly behind Alabama, I believe, but I mean those two and Vanderbilt all looking like four seeds, probably five seeds at this point in time. Um, where did you land on Florida on your overall seed list?
I have Florida 17th overall, so my top five seed. I really actually looked at Florida and Kansas both when analyzing them and thought these are four seeds. I just can't figure out a way to get them to the four line because if I was going to do that, I'd have to bump down like an Alabama or a Vanderbilt. And I just felt like those teams had done enough to stay there. So I'm really viewing a big drop off between spot 18 and 19 between Kansas
Yep.
and Clemson. And then I think behind Clemson and Arkansas, I have at 19-20. I think there's a big drop off after that too.
Yeah, 18 is absolutely the cut line for me, and I have Clemson at 19 as well. I do have St. John's at 20, so I think they're a little bit ahead of Arkansas, but right in that vicinity, somewhere on the six line, starts to get kind of ugly. As I texted you this morning, of the teams that I had between 19 and 39 on my overall seed list heading into yesterday, 14 of those 21 teams lost. So like I mean, you said about North Carolina, you're like, oh, they're going to tumble. It's like, well, how do we drop them behind other teams? Although we do have them on the list here as a bad loss. But Florida got that big win at Vanderbilt. That was, I mean, by far their best win of the season. I think that's their only Quad 1A win. They're now 5-5 against Quad 1. They also beat who'd they beat earlier in the week?
Tennessee.
Florida beat yeah, Tennessee at home and convincingly so. So that I think they've really come flying back. I mean, 3 games ago I had them not on the bubble, but I mean possibly in that 8-9 game range, and now they're playing for a protected seed. And I mean, on the flip side of that, I mean it's not a bad loss for Vanderbilt. I thought they played pretty well. Could have won if that hook and hold had been correctly called by Doug Shows, but he decided otherwise. I have Vanderbilt now at I think 17. I've dropped them all the way to a five seed, and I had them as a one seed 5 days ago, which I mean speaks volumes to what you're saying. Like the top 18 is really strong, and there's not much separating the ones from the threes and the fours at this point. Second biggest win, Kentucky at Tennessee. A little bit of a different big win. Doesn't turn a five seed into a four seed, turns a bubble team into I think I now have Kentucky as a nine seed. Where did you land on the Wildcats after that second consecutive wild comeback?
They landed 28th overall for me, so
Ooh,
hanging on to a seven seed. And I didn't think Kentucky was going to get that high, but there's just so many teams that lost around them. Eventually, they just moved a little bit higher than I thought they would.
yeah. I mean, I had them at I think 41 overall. Obviously, a road win over Tennessee, very nice, especially when all those teams in the 8, 9, 10 seed range seemed to lose yesterday. But I'm always a little more hesitant to move teams unless I absolutely have to. St. John's gets I believe that's technically a road win, right? I know it was at uh, not the Pavilion. What do they even call it there in Philly? But whatever. It was technically a road game. A really nice win over Villanova. I feel like those teams were like side by side in the projected seed list heading into that game. Whoever won was going to be probably a six, maybe even a five seed. Now the loser, six, probably a seven seed. I think you have both still as a six seed now, though, right?
Yeah, and I think it's because I came from the opposite approach. I had Villanova solidly ahead of St. John's entering the
Mm.
game. And so now St. John's moves a little bit in front of Villanova on the overall seed list, but kind of evens it out a little bit more. I think St. John's very similar to Florida, where I look at the quality of the team. Now I'm starting to see the number of quality wins get up into that range. But the same thing both teams have is still just a fair amount of losses and some losses that aren't so great. So it's just, I think both teams will continue to move up the seed list, but still just working from a bit of a deficit to start the year.
Yeah, so for both teams, that's the only quad 1A victory. Villanova's 0-2. St. John's is now 1-1. St. John's had that unsavory loss to Providence. I think they're trying to make up for that, but right now their resumes look very similar and the head-to-head results. So yeah, I think it'd be hard to justify having the Johnnies behind the Wildcats at this point, but they're both still solidly in. Fourth on the biggest win list, Virginia gets another really good win. I have Virginia up to a three seed now. I feel like I'm losing my mind. I think you still have them as a four seed, but as we more so you were saying yesterday, but we were discussing yesterday, it just does. You watch Virginia, it doesn't feel like they're a three seed, but then you look at their resume, it's like, damn, this team is good. Where are you overall on the Cavaliers now?
Yeah, I have UVA as a 13 overall seed. And I look at the team exactly like you said. I just think the thing they're still really lacking is a win over a top notch team. Now, you can say going on the road to SMU is a great win. I think the committee would view that as a truly great win, but they need to get a win over one of the top teams in the country. I think that will be the thing that ultimately pushes them a little bit higher because now you're starting to get into those ranges where you're dealing with the teams that do have wins over other elite teams. You talk about a three seed. I have Iowa State there. They went onto the road at Purdue and absolutely
Yeah.
demolished them. Those are the kinds of wins that teams in that range start to get. So I think Virginia definitely three seed caliber resume, even though I have them 13th overall. I think if they want to get into that one or two range, they're probably going to have to pick up a win against Duke.
Yeah, I think they have one of those resumes where if you just look at the quad buckets, they look a lot better than if you actually dig into the wins because they're 3-0 against quad 1A. But those are road wins over Louisville, SMU, and NC State, which I don't think either of us even has in the field right now. And we both have considerable questions about Louisville, without Michael Brown Jr. How good was that win? Actually, I think it's questionable. And even SMU, they're down in the 30s type of range right now. And then the last one, Georgia finally gets a truly quality win. And even that wasn't that elite at home against Arkansas, but I think they really made a statement there, showed that they are more than just a team that beats up on quad four competition. That was their first quad one win of the season. Where did you land on the Bulldogs? I'm not even sure where I have them on my overall seed list now.
Yeah, I have
I
them
think
as
I
an eight
have them
seed.
at
I actually thought
25.
they
Yeah.
might move up a little bit more than that just based on all the losses everybody else is taking. But when I sat down and really looked at them compared to other teams, like you said, that still just a win over Arkansas. And that doesn't mean to insult Arkansas at all. But when you're playing them on your home court, if you're a tournament team, you should expect to beat Arkansas at home if you're a tournament team. So I felt like it was a good win, one that solidifies the resume, but not one that really moves the needle as far as pumping them up the seed list.
Yeah, I think if there hadn't been so many losses in that vicinity yesterday, they probably wouldn't have really moved at all. I think I bumped them up like a full seed line, but yeah, that's a pretty low quad one win. Arkansas is now 24 in the net. Home against top 30 is quad one, so that may well be quad two within a couple of days, and then they'll be right back where they were without a quad one win. All right, pivoting entirely to worst losses. I don't think there can be any disagreement. The worst loss of the day, NC State losing at home to Georgia Tech. We had talked about the Wolfpack earlier in the week as, I mean, they were my last team in 1 week ago because they were 0-5 against quad one, but 5-0 against quad two, didn't have any bad losses. Now they don't have any great wins and they have a kind of terrible loss. We both have the Wolfpack out of our field right now. I still have them as my fourth team out. You don't even have them on the board. How far gone are the Wolfpack now for you?
Uh, so I would have had them in that next four out behind that,
Yeah,
but
sure, sure, sure.
I will say this: like, there's when I'm looking at how close teams are, I'm not necessarily thinking how could one win change your profile, because I do think NC State's one great win away from potentially jumping right back into the field. But
Yeah.
I look at what they currently have compared to other teams like Texas. I could see how the committee could get there today. I could see them saying, like, we really like the great wins at the top of the resume, even if there's not a whole lot of meat on the bone behind that. I could look at Cal and I could see the same thing. Like, yeah, you got a couple of quad one wins. You look good at times. We could see it with Cal. You look at the NC State resume, nothing in quad one and a quad four loss. That is just, there's no way the committee takes that team today. If Selection Sunday was today, there's a 0% chance NC State would be getting a bid. But again, I think NC State compared to teams like Cal long term, I still like NC State's chances a lot better.
Yeah, I would concur with that. But I think they've got a lot of work to do now. They actually lost one of their quad two wins. I don't know who it was. Was it Liberty? I think that might have been a quad two win at home, and now it's a quad three. So their resume just keeps getting worse every time I look at it. They now are outside the top 50 in the resume metrics average, which is the much more important than the qualitative average, where they're still top 30. Sticking in the Tar Heel State. North Carolina lost at Cal and gave up like 1 million points yet again. Their defense is god awful. They're now winless on the road in ACC play against all the teams that weren't in the ACC 2 years ago. Lost at SMU by 14, lost at Stanford earlier in the week, and now lost at Cal. I think we both wanted to drop North Carolina even more than we did. I got them down to, I think, 26 or 27 overall. I think you have them 25, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, they're hit sticking down to my last six seed as a 24. Wanted to
Okay.
drop them further. I just really couldn't. I was like, Tennessee lost at home to Kentucky. Like, who am I? I don't know who to put there. SMU lost at home to UVA. Like, somebody has to have a worse result or a better result. And really, like, as bad as it sounds, it wasn't a great performance. Going to Cal is not the worst thing in the world as far as the loss goes. So I actually found it hard to punish them as much as I wanted to, just because teams around them weren't doing a whole lot. I think long term, what this shows me is North Carolina's probably going to get a seed more commensurate with where their efficiency ratings were the entire time than what their resume was looking like. The thing they had going for them was just a very clean overall profile, and they don't have that anymore. So I think North Carolina is probably going to fade down to about that 7 range by the time Selection Sunday comes, maybe into the 8-9 game. Certainly not where the Tar Heels want to be.
Yeah. I mean, I think the big thing for them is they don't have any bad losses. Like you said, at Cal, not the end of the world. They're now 59 in the net, so that's quad one. At Stanford, also a quad one result. I think we both have Stanford in our field right now. We both have Cal close. Not terrible, but like you said, they were the best thing going for them was that they didn't have bad losses. They hadn't really proven all that much. I mean, we talked about them on Monday as a team that just doesn't really feel like it should have been a 4 seed or 5 seed, whatever they were at the time. And now I think they're starting to prove that a little bit. Third on the list, that's Iowa State. Lost at Cincinnati. That's not good. If they had lost just the game against Kansas and then bounced back and beat Cincinnati, I think they'd still be a solid 2 seed, probably 6 overall, somewhere in that range. But now I'm down to a near the bottom of the 3 seed line with the Cyclones in a hurry. And again, it's not that either loss was particularly terrible. It's just that the competition for those top seeds is just so strong right now.
Yeah, I agree. I have Iowa State 10th overall. I will say uh, I gotten a lot of flack on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, for having
It's Twitter.
Cincinnati still on my board of potential tournament teams. And everybody, even Cincinnati fans, were giving me grief for it. Like, why do you have them? Even we don't want them in the tournament. And I was just looking at the results. Look at how they played. with Jizzle James, it's not a surprise to me that they beat Iowa State after that. They actually had performances, including against Houston, nearly knocked off the Cougars, that made you think, actually, this team's probably not that bad. I want to see a few more games before I dismiss them entirely as a tournament team. We might end up looking back at this loss at Cincinnati and thinking it's not quite as bad as it looks today. We'll see. I think still, when you win 81-58 at Purdue, that's going to take you a long way. Still think Iowa State's a solid 3 seed at this point.
Yeah, I think just they don't have a whole lot beyond that is for me like yeah, that was one of the most impressive individual results of the entire season. Their next best win was against St. John's when they were nothing special. I mean that win has grown in stature over the last couple of weeks, but I mean at Baylor, not not phenomenal versus Iowa, not great. Like those are their third and fourth best wins of the season. So I feel like compared to those other teams in that range, now that they have a second loss, I think it was easy to drop them behind them. But yeah, we agree they're still a 3 seed. And then we get to a couple of mid majors here that took losses, which is never good for a mid major. Utah State loses at Grand Canyon. St. Mary's loses at Santa Clara. Both the Aggies and the Gales were just kind of teams that were climbing up the seed list almost by default. I had Utah State up to, I think, 21 overall heading into the weekend. St. Mary's was somewhere in that 28 to 30 range. I think the Gales are now kind of quietly on the bubble. I think they're back to their usual spot of, boy, if they don't win a game against Gonzaga, I don't know if they're getting in, even if they win everything else. And I think that kind of snuck up on people with a single loss to Santa Clara. But where did you land on both of those teams now?
I have them both as 9 seeds. I think both are in danger at this point. Utah State's metrics all look very good, but then you look at
Mhm.
their wins and you're like, who? Like, I mean, really, like, who have they beaten? And then I think St. Mary's, you kind of do a bit of a similar thing. They have a little bit better wins when you really break it down than Utah State. But I do think St. Mary's looks worse than Utah State. I think Utah State looks the part more than St. Mary's to me. I think Utah State is still in pretty good shape for a bid as long as they don't really tank down the stretch. I think St. Mary's is in much more trouble over the course of the season. It'll be interesting to see if Santa Clara might make a chance at getting a bid
Yeah.
now. With this win, they could potentially go ahead and add a win over Gonzaga or St. Mary's. If they sweep St. Mary's, potentially they take St. Mary's spot in the bracket. I could see that happening.
Yeah, I forget who Santa Clara's terrible loss was to, but I know they now have 5 quad 2 wins, but they have a quad 4 loss. But all the metrics look fine. Like they're absolutely in the conversation now. I think they're still probably in that like 10th team out type of range. But on St. Mary's, I mean, they've only played one game against a definite tournament team, and that was their 25-point loss to Vanderbilt in Nassau. I think that's going to really be a problem if they don't beat Gonzaga, even if they win every other game left on their schedule. Pivoting to these 5 bubble brawls, San Diego State picked up a really nice home win over New Mexico. Miles Bird went for like 21, 8, 4, 3, and 3 or something crazy line. I mean that was a wildly entertaining game. Just went back and forth. Classic. Just Mountain West games are just fun to watch, man. I don't know if any of those teams are going to win games in the tournament, but I love watching Mountain West conference games. I feel like every night or every Saturday night on CBS Sports, there's some fun game going on in that league. But I mean, you can see over here, you now have St. Mary's, San Diego State just barely in. I also have them in that range, but they are my projected auto bid for the Mountain West. I think I have them one spot ahead of New Mexico, but all of a sudden the Aztecs are in. They were 3-3 on Thanksgiving with a home loss to Troy. They've really come back. They've won 10 out of the last 11. Anything you want to say on San Diego State, New Mexico?
I think I want to say something about Utah State, San Diego State, New Mexico as a whole. I think the Mountain West, very entertaining conference, like you mentioned, but maybe the Boise State loss to Hawaii Pacific was more of a message about the league at large this year, which is they have not picked up wins out of conference that are aging well at all. So I am very concerned for the Mountain West about getting potentially even two teams into the field if Utah State wins the conference tournament. Like, I know I have San Diego State in right now. I know I have New Mexico close, but I could easily see a situation where if either San Diego State or New Mexico don't finish strong down the stretch, we could potentially truly be looking at a one bid Mountain West, and I would not be surprised at all.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I didn't know it was your goal to mention Hawaii Pacific every Sunday on this pod, but I love it. But yeah, I think it looks like a three bid league right now, but it's questionable. It's much more likely to be two than four. I don't see a path to four at this point. And yeah, it could be a one bid league if New Mexico and San Diego State fall flat on their face the rest of the way. Next bubble brawl, Texas A&M wins at Texas. I think that was a classic. Winner will be in the projected field. Loser is a little bit out. Graham, you now have Texas as your first team out there. My fifth team out, not quite on the board here. Um, Aggies have come on strong, man. They looked terrible in the beginning under Bucky Ball, but they are tied for first place in the SEC. Who saw that coming?
Yeah, I mean, hats off to Texas A&M. I think a likely tournament team at this point. And again, you mentioned the SEC thing. Like, part of this is I know we talk bracketology, but we're just fans of the sport at large. Like, it's exciting to see Texas A&M first place in the SEC. So would love to see them make a run towards the SEC tournament title and see what happens, or not tournament title, SEC regular season title. Still doubting that because I think Florida is going to win it, would be my guess. But
Yeah.
really just an exciting time to be an Aggie fan, I would think.
We'll stick in the SEC. We'll temporarily jump Iowa there as the third bubble brawl and go down to LSU. Picked up a nice win over Missouri. We both have Missouri among our last four in still because of their marquee wins, what they beat Kentucky and Florida. That goes a long way at this point with both of those teams picking up huge wins yesterday. And that brings LSU back close. If LSU had not lost at the buzzer, to Kentucky. If they hadn't blown that 18-point lead, I think they'd be somewhat comfortably in right now, but they are just 2-4 against the top two quads, even with this home win, or was that a road win? Road win over Missouri, I think. Um, how do you feel about these respective sets of Tigers at this point?
Yeah, I think looking at Missouri, still feel pretty good about the overall resume. I know the bubble doesn't really quite show it, but I think there's a big drop off after that San Diego State spot where I was
Uh-huh.
just trying to find anyone that I could put into the field, and I ultimately decided on Oklahoma State. But I do feel pretty good about Missouri in comparison to the bubble. Uh, LSU, had they picked up that one over Kentucky, I agree they'd be comfortably in. Still a lot of work to do. The one thing LSU has going for them is the committee could look back and say, hey, they dealt with a more serious injury problem than most teams in the country dealt with. Maybe they get a little bit of a break. So it will be interesting to see what happens with the Tigers from here on out. I think LSU could certainly work themselves back into the field.
Fun fact on Missouri, they are 2-2 against Quad 1A. That makes them the only SEC team with a 500 or better record and at least three games played against Quad 1A. I thought that was interesting. Just the state of the SEC in general, they're way down from last year. We talked about that on Friday. Even though we had like 10 or 11 teams in, only feels like there are six solidly in. I feel like there are going to be a lot more games like this: Texas A&M, Texas, LSU, Missouri, where it's like you lose that game and you're out. I think there are going to be a lot of those in SEC this year. Climbing back up to number three on the list, Iowa wins at Indiana, wins handily at Indiana. I think that was a 17-point game, fresh off Indiana's 21-point loss to Michigan State. Again, I think the winner of that game probably is in right now and the loser is out. But because it was Iowa, I think they're very comfortably in. And I think Indiana is nowhere close at this point. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's exactly what I was thinking. Whoever won that game would be in, loser out. But Iowa winning gets them all the way up to a 9 seed, way away from the bubble.
Yeah.
And Indiana losing has just truly no argument whatsoever for being in the tournament right now. So not even considered for me at this point.
Yeah. Indiana's now 1-6 against quads 1 and 2, outside the top 60 in the resume metrics. I don't see it. They are at Michigan this Tuesday, and then they're at home against Purdue next Tuesday. If they don't win either of those games, I think stick a fork in them. They're done. Fifth on the list, Butler wins at Seton Hall. It does not get Butler into the field for either of us. It knocks Seton Hall right to the brink, but we both have them just barely still in. Seton Hall also, because NC State lost to Georgia Tech, Seton Hall's best win got worse over the weekend. So a terrible Saturday for the Pirates, who we already had pretty big questions about. They now don't have a single win over the projected field, but like you said, you landed on Oklahoma State being in. I have New Mexico in, but there's a lot of just plugging your nose and picking a team at this point for those last couple of spots in the field. We're almost by inertia. We both landed on Seton Hall, right? We both had them around like 35, 36 heading into the day, and now they plummet a good bit. But do you think the Pirates will get in the end? Because even though I have them in now, I don't, unless they beat Connecticut, I don't think they get in, and they already lost one of those opportunities.
Yeah, so I mean, you already kind of said what I was thinking. The schedule is not looking kind for them down the stretch. I had they beaten Butler, I actually think I would have given a different answer. I would have said yes. They probably get in at the end of the year. Now I think they probably don't get in at the end of the year, just because you look at the return games they have to play, and the odds they're going to go on the road and win these return games is not looking good. So don't like the schedule set up for Seton Hall at this point. On the other hand, they do pull one or two of those off. They could potentially be well into the field at that point.
Yeah, I think they still have both games against St. John's, but have to play at Villanova. Still have to play at Creighton. Have to play at Connecticut. So yeah, opportunities. Also opportunities to prove that they don't belong. We'll go to our one seeds now, which we agree on the four teams. I have Nebraska ahead of Duke just because they're undefeated. You have Duke ahead of Nebraska, right? You have Nebraska at three overall and UConn at four.
Yeah.
But we agree on the ones, just who would be wearing the home jerseys if two plays three in the Final Four. That's the only difference. And I do think Duke is a better team than Nebraska. I just they're undefeated. I'm going to give them their props. They got four quad 1A wins. It's not like they're fraudulently undefeated. And then I think we have the same two seeds as well, possibly even in the same order: Michigan, Purdue, Houston, and Gonzaga. Yeah.
I have the same two seeds. The only difference is I have Gonzaga over Houston. If Houston does what I think they're going to do to Arizona State tonight, then Houston would move above Gonzaga.
Yeah. Going to the bubble, I think we've already hit on pretty much all of these teams, right? I think the only one we didn't really discuss is Oklahoma State, which one miraculous fashion on thanks to Kansas State proving why it's a 500 team, fouling a 3-point shooter in a 2-point game with 2 seconds remaining, and Victorious Miller stepped up, drained all three free throws to keep the Cowboys in the conversation, but just barely, man. I don't think they're really in it for the long haul. And we talked about them the other day, where it's almost I think I was too high on Oklahoma State when they were like 9-0. I think I had them up to a 6 seed, and this is one of those cases where doing bracketology every day works against us. We're too reluctant to bump them down too far for a couple of losses. But you look at the overall state of the resume, and it's not great. Still winless against Quad One. They don't have a terrible loss, but they do have a couple of not great losses. But yeah, you landed with Oklahoma State as your last team in. I mean, anything you want to add on them?
I mean, the only thing I would say is I think Oklahoma's fall. I'm sure Cowboys fans like watching Oklahoma perform poorly on the stretch, but I do think that's hurting them a little bit because now it's not a loss to a fellow bubble team. It's a loss on a neutral court to a team that isn't even going to be anywhere close to the field. So I think all the times that you looked at Oklahoma State's non-conference schedule and thought it's bad, but there's a couple teams that could be tournament worthy. No, it's just bad. That's what it was at this point. So I think the Cowboys are eventually going to fade, not even off the projected field. I think they're going to fade well out of the bracket by the time Selection Sunday shows up.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if they win against any of the top six teams in the Big 12. And they're going to have to eventually in order to stay in, I think. The other team we didn't mention, Ohio State, we both have them among our first four out after their win over UCLA, who is now nowhere close to the conversation. The Bruins are 2-6 against quads 1 and 2. Just they've now become the biggest disappointment of the season. I think like everybody does that at the turn of the new year. Everybody was saying, St. John's, Kentucky, Florida are the biggest disappointments. It's the Bruins at this point. They were number 12 in the preseason AP poll, and now they are pretty much dead. But Ohio State forever looking like a bubble team. I feel like they're just going to stay. There's always one team that's just on the bubble all season long, and I think the Buckeyes have decided it's going to be them this year. They're 4-5 against quads 1 and 2, but all four of those wins are against quad 2. Nothing particularly great. Are you having some family time there? You're mute, and it looks like you're petting a dog. What's going on?
I was opening up a fruit snack for a 3-year-old.
Love it. Say hi for me. We can wrap up with that, and you can go watch football. Oh, she wants to peek into the camera. That'll do it for today. We'll be back with ACC talk tomorrow. Until next time, enjoy the hoops and the football today. Take care.